Paul's call for celibacy in this alternative text attracts many women, including a virgin named Thecla. She is so swayed by Paul's words that she rejects Thamyris, her wealthy fiancé.
Her fiancé is enraged. He's one of the leading men of the city, and he drags her before the local tribunal, who decides that she's broken a law that's so important that she deserves to die.
Burn her that will not marry, in order that all the women that have been taught by this man may be afraid. It is here that the Acts of Paul and Thecla recounts its first miracle.
So they're going to actually burn her at the stake, but then God does this great miracle and sends down a thunderstorm and puts out the flame, and she manages to escape, and she goes off with Paul on his missionary journeys.
The two travel to Antioch in Syria, where the pattern is repeated.
Another influential, wealthy man falls in love with her. And what does she do with that? When he tries to seduce her in the middle of the town square, she rips his cloak. She embarrasses him in public, and so he takes her to the governor, and once again we find Thecla in a perilous situation.
This time it leads to a strange spectacle in the local arena.
The most extraordinary scene in all of early Christian literature, bar none, because once again she's in the arena, typical, but then instead of the audience breaking down pagans against Christians, it breaks down, first of all, women against men. All the women, that is all the pagan women, are on her side.
When the wild beasts are released to kill her, the female animals protect her. A she-lion, which was of all the most fierce, ran to Thecla and fell down at her feet. At that, the multitude of women shouted aloud.
And it's this very gendered imagery of the female lion protecting her from the male bear, the male lion. And finally, she's protected by a queen who faints in the audience and thus has Thecla pardoned.
Throughout the Acts of Paul and Thecla, it is the women who are the heroes, while Paul, the scholarly missionary whose letters take up nearly half of the New Testament, is portrayed in a less sympathetic light. He lets Thecla accompany him, but refuses to baptize her, implying she is not yet worthy. When trouble starts, he does little to defend her.
He's gone. I mean, she's in the arena fighting for her life, and he's on the road out of town.
In the arena, Thecla performs a final act of faith.
There's a huge tank of water there, maybe with sharks or something in it. And she jumps in, because Paul has refused to baptize her, and she baptizes herself. God approves of it because he sends a lightning bolt to kill all the sharks, as it were. And so she baptizes herself. Now, this is fairly radical feminism. If the men won't baptize you, baptize yourself.
Though Thecla remained popular, the Acts of Paul and Thecla was suppressed. Tertullian, a 2nd century church father, dismissed it as a forgery.
Tertullian disparages the stories about Thecla because Thecla in these stories, according to Tertullian, is acting like a man. Women are not allowed to baptize, even baptize themselves, I suppose, whereas Thecla obviously does baptize. Women are not allowed to preach the word, but Thecla does preach the word in this book. So Tertullian and others like him rejected the Thecla stories on the grounds that they didn't have the proper view of women.
Whether it's Thecla in the 2nd century or Thecla today, the role of women in the early church or the role of women in the churches today continues to be a fairly contentious issue.
It is Thecla's celibacy, ironically, that may have branded her a feminist in the ancient world.
Women, when they were young, were under the authority of their fathers. When they got married, they were under the authority of their husbands. In either case, they're under the authority of a man. Ascetic women who don't engage in sexual activities don't have to get married, and so they're not under the authority of a man.
We have to recognize that for a woman to actually choose celibacy is a fairly radical thing. There is a side of Thecla that would have been deeply offensive to those that were promoting and asserting sort of a male patriarchal model.